The great hall of the Androni Palace stretched, higher than any building Tom Harris had ever seen on Earth. Crystal, walls caught the light from 3 different suns and threw rainbow patterns across the polished floor. Tom stood at the center of it all, feeling very small in his simple black diplomatic suit. Around him, dozens of alien beings watched with their many eyes. The Androni people looked like living jewels, with skin that shifted between blue and purple depending on the light. Each had 6 eyes arranged in perfect circles around their heads, and their movements were graceful like dancers. Tom had been on their planet for 3 months now. He came as Earth's first ambassador to an alien world, carrying the hopes of all humanity in his briefcase full of peace treaties. But nothing was going as planned. "Human Tom Harris," said a voice that sounded like music mixed with thunder. Tom looked up at the massive throne carved from a single piece of white crystal. Queen Zephyra sat there like a goddess from ancient stories. She was larger than the other Androni, with skin that gleamed silver blue and robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her 6 eyes focused on him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Your Majesty," Tom said, giving the formal bow he had practiced 1,000 times. The Queen leaned forward. "We have been talking for many weeks about your people's request to settle in the Outer Rim systems. My council grows tired of these discussions." Tom felt sweat form on his forehead despite the cool air. The peace talks were his responsibility. If he failed, humanity would remain trapped in their small corner of space, always wondering what lay beyond. Other alien races controlled the space lanes, and most of them were not as patient as the Androni. "Your Majesty, my people only want to live in peace alongside yours. The Outer Rim systems have many empty planets that could support both our races." One of the Queen's advisors made a sound like breaking glass. Tom had learned this was how they laughed, but it was not a kind laugh. "Peace," the advisor said. "Humans speak much of peace, but your people have barely learned to travel between stars. What can you offer that we cannot take?" Tom straightened his shoulders. This was the question that came up in every meeting. Humanity was young compared to races like the Androni, who had been traveling space for thousands of years. Earth's technology was basic, their weapons simple, their knowledge limited. "We offer something different," Tom said. "We offer a new way of looking at old problems." Queen Zephyra's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. Something Tom had learned meant she was thinking. "Explain this." Tom pulled out a small device and projected a hologram into the air. It showed a star map with trade routes marked in different colors. "Your current trade routes take ships around the Vortex Nebula, adding 3 weeks to every journey. Human scientists believe we can find a safe path through the nebula itself." "Impossible," said another advisor. "The nebula has magnetic storms that destroy any ship's navigation. But humans have experience with magnetic navigation from our home planet," Tom continued. "Earth has strong magnetic fields that shift and change. Our sailors learned to read these patterns thousands of years ago. We think the same principles might work in space." The hall fell quiet. Tom could hear his own heartbeat in the silence. He had been saving this proposal for the right moment, hoping it would tip the negotiations in humanity's favor. Queen Zephyra stood from her throne and walked down the crystal steps. Her movements were smooth and controlled, but Tom could see something changing in her expression. When she reached the bottom, she was only a few feet away from him. "Human Tom Harris," she said. "You speak of old knowledge applied to new problems. But tell me, what do you truly know about us?" The question caught Tom off guard. "Your Majesty, I have studied Androni culture for 2 years. I know your people value honor, wisdom, and artistic achievement. I know you have ruled justly for 3 centuries and that your empire spans 40 star systems." "Facts from books," the Queen said dismissively. "Any human could learn such things. But do you understand what it means to be Androni?" Tom felt the weight of every eye in the hall upon him. This felt like a test, but he was not sure what the right answer might be. "I think," he said slowly, "that being Androni means carrying the responsibility of thousands of years of civilization. It means making decisions not just for today, but for generations not yet born. It means maintaining traditions while still growing and changing." Something shifted in the Queen's expression. For a moment, her formal mask slipped and Tom saw something that might have been surprise. "Better," she said, but still words that could apply to any long-lived race. "You speak of understanding, but understanding requires more than study. It requires connection. She began to walk in a slow circle around Tom. He forced himself to stand still, though every instinct told him to turn and keep her in sight. "My people have a saying," the Queen continued. "To know someone truly, you must know the name their mother whispered when they took their first breath. Not the name they choose, not the name others give them, but the name that holds their essence." Tom nodded, trying to follow her meaning. Many Earth cultures had similar beliefs about the power of names. "I have ruled for 300 years, Queen Zephyra said. In that time I have taken many names. Zephyra the Just, Zephyra the Wise, Zephyra the Builder of Bridges between worlds. But these are throne names chosen for their political value." She stopped in front of him again. "My true name, the one given at birth, is known to no one. My birth family died in the Great Plague 2 centuries ago. The knowledge died with them." The hall was so quiet Tom could hear the soft humming of the crystal walls as they processed sunlight. "Yet you speak of connection," the Queen said, and now there was something playful in her voice that made Tom nervous. "You claim humans can solve old problems with new thinking. Very well, human Tom Harris. Let us test this claim." Tom felt his stomach drop. Whatever was coming, he was not going to like it. Queen Zephyra raised her voice so all could hear. "By the ancient laws of challenge that have governed our people since the first star flights, I offer you a bargain. If you can discover my true birth name, not these titles I wear, but the name my mother spoke over my cradle, then I will not merely grant your people settlement rights." She paused, and Tom could see her advisors beginning to look alarmed. "I will bind our peoples through the sacred marriage bond of my ancestors, a union that would make humans not subjects or allies but family to the Androni Empire." The hall erupted. Advisors spoke rapidly in their musical language, their voices rising in pitch with obvious distress. Tom caught enough words to understand they were talking about ancient laws and binding oaths that could not be broken. "Your Majesty," Tom said quickly, "I don't think— Do you accept the challenge?" the Queen asked, cutting him off. Tom looked around the hall. Every alien face was turned toward him, waiting for his answer. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people counting on him to secure their future among the stars. He thought about the pride in the Queen's voice when she said her name was known to no one. She believed it was impossible. That much was clear from her confident smile and the panicked expressions of her advisors. But she had made the offer in front of witnesses, bound by laws that seemed to carry tremendous weight in their culture. "What would be the terms?" Tom asked. 3 days, the Queen said. "You may have access to our royal archives and any historical records you wish to examine. If you succeed, our peoples are bound in the strongest alliance possible. If you fail, the marriage bond cannot be invoked again for 1,000 years, and humanity must prove its worth through other means." Tom realized she was giving him a face-saving way to fail. Even if he could not guess her name, she was offering access to archives that might contain other useful information for the negotiations. "I accept," he said. The Queen's smile widened, showing teeth that glittered like polished marble. "Excellent. Lord Kalen will escort you to the archives. You may begin immediately." As Tom was led away, he heard the Queen address her council in their own language. He caught enough words to understand she was explaining the impossibility of his task and assuring them that this was merely a dramatic way to demonstrate human limitations. The Royal Archives occupied an entire wing of the palace. Lord Kalen, a thin Androni with nervous mannerisms, led Tom through corridors lined with crystalline storage units. "The Queen is quite confident in her challenge," Kalen said as they walked. "The birth records you seek are centuries old, and our naming traditions are complex beyond human understanding." "Tell me about these naming traditions," Tom said. Kalen's 6 eyes blinked in the pattern Tom had learned indicated surprise. "You wish to understand the theoretical framework before examining the specific records? In human culture, we have a saying, you cannot solve a puzzle until you understand its shape." They entered a vast circular chamber filled with floating displays of light and sound. Information swirled through the air in patterns that made Tom dizzy to watch. "Androni names are not simple labels," Kalen explained. "They are mathematical formulas that encode multiple layers of meaning. The time of birth, the alignment of celestial bodies, the hopes of the parents, the social position of the family, even the weather patterns on the day of naming." Tom felt his confidence begin to waver. This was far more complex than he had imagined. The true name is constructed according to rules that have evolved over tens of thousands of years, Kalen continued. It is not enough to know our language. One must understand the cultural mathematics, the astronomical significance, the social codes of the era in which the naming took place. And Queen Zephyra's birth was 3 centuries ago? Indeed, a time when our culture was significantly different from today. Even if you could access the birth records, which were likely destroyed in the Great Plague, you would need to understand archaic forms of our naming mathematics that are no longer taught. Kalen gestured to the swirling displays around them. These archives contain the accumulated knowledge of our civilization. Birth records, astronomical data, cultural texts, historical analyses. But they are organized according to Androni logic patterns, not human ones. Tom walked to the nearest display and reached out tentatively. The light responded to his touch, forming symbols that meant nothing to him. How do I begin? He asked. Query the system for birth records from the royal lineage 3 centuries past, Kalen suggested, though I suspect you will find only fragments. The plague years were chaotic and many records were lost. Tom placed his hands on the control interface and tried to form the query in his limited Androni vocabulary. The display flickered and began showing streams of data. Most of it was incomprehensible. Symbols flowed past too quickly to track, and when Tom tried to slow them down, the meaning seemed to change. After an hour of trying, he had managed to identify what might be birth records from the right time period, but they were written in symbolic languages that shifted meaning based on context. This is like trying to read music, mathematics and poetry all at the same time, Tom muttered. Kalen made the glass-breaking sound of Androni laughter, an accurate description. Our ancestors believed that important information should not be easy to access casually. Truth, they said, must be earned through effort and understanding. Tom continued working as the day wore on. He found references to the royal family from 3 centuries ago, astronomical charts showing celestial alignments, and what appeared to be cultural guides to naming practices. But connecting these pieces seemed impossible. As the palace's lighting dimmed to simulate evening, Tom finally sat back from the displays, rubbing his tired eyes. I should return to my quarters, he said. Perhaps fresh perspective will help tomorrow. Kalen nodded. The Queen has arranged guest chambers for you near the archives. Rest well, human Tom Harris. You have 2 days remaining. Alone in his chambers, Tom sat by the window looking out at the alien stars. 3 months of careful diplomacy had led to this moment, and he was no closer to success than when he started. The Queen's challenge was beginning to feel like an elaborate way to demonstrate human inadequacy. But as Tom prepared for sleep, something nagged at the back of his mind. Something about the patterns he had seen in the archives reminded him of something familiar, though he could not place what it was. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and time was running short. Tom woke before the palace lighting systems began their morning cycle. His mind had been working on the puzzle even while he slept, and he felt an urgent need to return to the archives. Something about the patterns he had seen yesterday kept pulling at his thoughts like a half-remembered song. Lord Kalen was waiting for him outside the archive chambers, holding a tray of what passed for breakfast among the Androni, crystalline fruits that tasted like honey mixed with starlight. You are early, human Tom Harris, Kalen observed. Most beings require more rest after their first encounter with our knowledge systems. I couldn't sleep, Tom admitted, accepting the offered food gratefully. Something about your naming patterns feels familiar, but I can't place why. Kalen's 6 eyes blinked in the sequence that indicated curiosity. Familiar? How could Androni cultural mathematics be familiar to a human? Tom shook his head as they entered the archive chamber. I don't know yet, but my grandmother used to say that all intelligent beings face the same basic problems. How to mark important moments, how to pass knowledge to children, how to remember the dead. Maybe the solutions are more similar than we think. The displays came alive as Tom approached, responding to his presence by showing the same swirling patterns of information he had struggled with the day before. But now, instead of feeling overwhelmed, Tom forced himself to look for the underlying structure. Show me the simplest example of an Androni birth. Name, he said to the system. A single pattern appeared, elegant symbols that flowed into each other like water finding its path downhill. Kalen stepped forward to explain. This name belongs to my own nephew born last year. The first symbol represents the season of his birth. The second shows the position of our primary star. The third indicates his family lineage, and the fourth expresses his parents' hopes for his future. Tom studied the pattern carefully. So each part has a specific meaning, but they combine to create something larger. Precisely. The individual elements are like notes in a musical composition. Alone they are simple, but together they create harmony and meaning. Tom nodded slowly. This was starting to make sense. And for someone born 3 centuries ago, the pattern would follow the same basic structure, but use older symbols? Yes, though the cultural context would be different. The hopes and fears of that time period, the astronomical knowledge available then, the social structures that shaped naming choices. Tom turned back to the displays and began pulling up information about the time period when Queen Zephyra was born. The more he learned about that era, the more a strange familiarity grew in his mind. 3 centuries ago, the Androni had been recovering from a devastating war with a machine intelligence. Their culture emphasized survival, hope for renewal, and the strength found in natural forces. Children born in that time received names that reflected these values. The queen was born during the Festival of Renewal, Tom said, reading from an astronomical chart. It happens once every 73 years when all 3 of your sons align with the home moon. A very auspicious time, Kalen agreed. Children born during the festival are believed to carry special blessings. Tom continued digging through the cultural records, learning about naming traditions specific to that era. Parents chose symbols representing natural phenomena they hoped would protect their children. Popular elements included words for storm, star, protection, strength, and new beginnings. Hours passed as Tom immersed himself in the ancient data. Slowly, a picture began forming in his mind of what the Queen's birth name might look like, but the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While searching for examples of festival-time names, Tom discovered a collection of children's songs from that era. The Androni preserved these melodies as cultural treasures, and the archive system could play them back with full translation. As the first song began, a lullaby about stars dancing through storm clouds, Tom felt a shock of recognition run through him. Kalen. Play that again, he said urgently. The haunting melody filled the chamber, and Tom listened carefully to both the original Androni words and the translated version. The pattern was unmistakable once he heard it. This is extraordinary, Tom whispered. What is extraordinary? Kalen asked, clearly puzzled by Tom's excitement. Tom pulled out his personal datapad and accessed files he had not looked at in years. My grandmother was a folk music collector on Earth. She spent her life recording traditional songs and stories from different human cultures. Listen to this. He played a recording of an old Celtic lullaby his grandmother had sung to him as a child. The melody was different, but the structure underneath was identical to the Androni song. Both songs embed names within the verses, Tom explained, his words coming faster as understanding dawned. In ancient Celtic culture, parents would hide their children's true names inside protective songs. The names were broken into syllables and scattered through the verses, disguised as descriptions of natural events. Kalen's eyes all focused on Tom with laser intensity. You believe Androni naming songs follow this same pattern? I'm certain of it. Look at the structure. The lullaby mentions a star being born during a storm, protected by ancient winds, blessed by the light of 3 suns. Those aren't just poetic images. They're name elements disguised as story. Tom began working frantically with the archive displays, pulling up every children's song from the festival period 3 centuries ago. He found dozens of lullabies, but one stood out immediately. This one, he said, highlighting a song with unusual complexity. It's longer than the others, and the imagery is more specific. Listen to how it describes the birth of a star child during the great storm of renewal. As the song played, Tom wrote down every word that could be a name element. Starborn, storm-blessed, silver light, wind-protected, hope carrier, strength giver. The song wove these concepts together in a story about a child destined to bring peace between warring worlds. But how do you determine which elements form the actual name? Kalen asked. Tom grinned, feeling pieces of the puzzle click into place. The same way Celtic names worked. You look for the pattern of emphasis in the song. Certain syllables are held longer. Certain words repeat in modified forms. Certain concepts anchor the entire verse structure. Working with the musical analysis tools in the archive system, Tom mapped the song's rhythm and emphasis patterns. 3 words stood out clearly: They appeared in modified forms throughout the song, always at points of musical emphasis, always connected to the core imagery. More, Tom said, reading the syllables. Feini. In the ancient Androni dialect, these would combine to mean something like starborn storm or storm-blessed light. Kalen made a sound Tom had never heard before, like crystal bells ringing in harmony. You have constructed a name from a children's song? This seems impossible. Not impossible, Tom said, but doubt crept into his voice. But I need to verify this somehow. Is there any way to check if this name fits the mathematical requirements for a royal birth name from that period? Kalen was quiet for a long moment, all 6 eyes blinking in complex patterns. Finally, he gestured to a different section of the archive. There is one possibility. The royal family maintained detailed astronomical records for every birth. If your proposed name is correct, its mathematical values should align with the celestial conditions at the time of the Queen's birth. They spent the next several hours learning to use the astronomical calculation systems. Tom's proposed name, which he now believed was pronounced Morvain, needed to match specific numerical requirements based on star positions, solar alignments, and lunar phases. The mathematics were incredibly complex, but Tom's years of engineering training helped him understand the underlying logic. Each symbol in the name carried numerical values that had to add up to specific totals, representing the astronomical conditions at birth. The star alignment gives us a base value of 47, Tom said, working through the calculations. The triple sun conjunction adds 31. The festival moon position contributes 19. Kalen checked Tom's work using archive systems. Correct on all counts. The total astronomical value for that birth time would be 97. Tom felt his heart racing as he calculated the numerical values of the syllables in Morvain, using the ancient mathematical system. Mor equals 23 in the old system. Ve equals 31. Ein equals 43. They added the numbers together. 23 plus 31 plus 43 equaled exactly 97. Impossible, Kalen whispered. Tom stared at the calculations, hardly believing what he was seeing. The name fit perfectly. Not just the cultural requirements and the hidden song pattern, but the precise astronomical mathematics of royal naming traditions. There's only one way to find out if I'm right, Tom said. The request for an audience with Queen Zephyra was granted immediately. Word had apparently spread through the palace that the human ambassador was preparing to make his answer to the challenge. Tom stood once again in the great crystal hall, but this time the atmosphere was different. Where before there had been polite skepticism, now there was tension. The Queen's advisors clearly believed their ruler had made a dangerous gamble, while the Queen herself maintained her confident demeanor. Human Tom Harris, Queen Zephyra said from her throne, 2 days have passed. Have you come to admit the impossibility of your task, or do you claim to have discovered what no being has known for 2 centuries? Tom took a deep breath. Everything depended on this moment. If he was wrong, humanity's chances of joining the galactic community would be set back by generations. If he was right, he was about to change the course of history. Your Majesty, I have studied your archives and learned much about Androni culture. I discovered that your people, like mine, embed the most precious truths in the safest possible places. The Queen leaned forward slightly. Explain. On Earth, we have many cultures that hide true names in songs and stories, protecting them from those who might use the names for harm. The ancient Celts were masters of this art. They would weave names into lullabies, disguising identity as poetry. Murmurs spread through the hall as translators worked to convey the concept to various alien dignitaries. I found a children's song in your archives, Tom continued. A lullaby from the Festival of Renewal 3 centuries past. Hidden in its verses, protected by the innocence of a mother's love, I found the syllables of a name. Queen Zephyra's composed expression flickered for just an instant. You base your answer on a children's song? On a children's song, astronomical mathematics, and the understanding that all parents, whether human or Androni, want the same thing, to give their children names that will protect and guide them through whatever storms life may bring. Tom stepped forward. Your true name, the one your mother whispered when you took your first breath, is Morvain, starborn storm. The child who would weather any tempest and still shine with the light of hope. The silence that followed was absolute. Tom could hear his own heartbeat, could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. Queen Zephyra sat perfectly still on her throne, 6 eyes fixed on his face with an intensity that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Then slowly, the queen began to laugh. But this was not the musical laughter Tom had heard before. This was something deeper, more complex. Joy mixed with amazement. Shock blended with recognition. She laughed until tears formed in all 6 eyes, until her composed royal demeanor cracked completely. "Morvain," she whispered, and the words seemed to transform her. The distant queen became, for a moment, simply a person hearing her true name spoken after centuries of silence. The hall erupted. Advisors spoke rapidly in overlapping conversations, their glass-breaking voices creating a symphony of astonishment. Several alien dignitaries from other species began rapid consultations with their translators, trying to understand what had just happened. Queen Zephyra stood from her throne and descended the crystal steps. When she reached Tom, she placed one hand on his shoulder, a gesture of equality that sent new waves of shocked conversation through the watching crowd. "Human Tom Harris," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "You have done something I believed impossible. Not only have you spoken my true name, but you have shown me that the gulf between our peoples is not as wide as I believed." She turned to address the full assembly. "By the ancient laws that have governed our people since the first star flights, I am bound by sacred oath. The marriage alliance between our peoples is sealed." Tom felt dizzy as the implications hit him. "Your Majesty, I hope you understand that humans will need time to fully comprehend what this alliance means for both our cultures." Queen Zephyra smiled, and for the first time since Tom had met her, it was a genuinely warm expression. "Of course, but today you have proven that understanding flows both ways. You solved an impossible puzzle by recognizing that we are not so different after all." She gestured to her advisors. "Prepare the alliance documents. Humanity has earned its place among the star-traveling peoples, not through superior technology or military might, but through the greatest strength of all, the ability to truly understand another." As the hall buzzed with activity, Tom realized that his grandmother's old folk songs had done more than preserve Earth's cultural heritage. They had unlocked the door to humanity's future among the stars. "Morvain," he said quietly. The queen turned back to him. "Yes, it's a beautiful name. Your mother chose well." Queen Zephyra nodded, her 6 eyes bright with emotion. She would have been amazed to know that her lullaby would one day build a bridge between worlds. And so it was that humanity joined the galactic community not through conquest or commerce, but through the simple recognition that love, hope, and the desire to protect our children are universal truths that cross the vast distances between stars.